Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're all doing great and following the 3 H's of the channel. And in this video, it's all about Malaysia and Brunei in Southeast Asia. So, if that sounds like something you're interested in, definitely pull up a stump with me and let's jump into it. Thank you for watching. I have some stories to tell all those who are interested, and to pique your interest, I will be telling you an obscure story about a thing called a Sigbin, which my brother had the unfortunate incident of encountering. I'll tell you that one, along with a few stories of my stay in Brunei and encounters with Malaysian spooky things. So as I said, this happened to my brother. He was around 13 to 14 at this time. We had 6 chow chows. Basically, they look like lions and they're big fluffy dogs. My mom loves them because they naturally ward off spirits. She's also very Filipino and not Chinese, but still loves them. The dogs have a tendency to run out on their own. One day, our gate opens to let our car in. The house entrance is the gate. Past that is the main door, so you have to go through the parking garage to get in or out of the house. 3 of the big dogs run like hell. I wasn't home, so I couldn't help. My brother hunts them down at 9 p.m. at night. This was around 2008, and our subdivision, or neighborhood, downtown was still pretty rural in many senses. There was a large abundance of belet trees, which in Filipino culture are usually enchanted and can either carry spirits or certain energy that attracts spirits and monsters. Even now, we still have forests around our old house, because to even cut down and disturb them is incredibly bad for your long-term health, in being that you suddenly die days after, or the entire operation begins to mysteriously go wrong. So the dogs got pretty far from the house, around 1 kilometer, so my brother had to carry these 3 large bear dogs away by himself. They end up in an open field. A forest is not too far beyond it. As my brother wrangles them up, he falls, and all of a sudden, he can't get up. This isn't a Life Alert ad. I know what you may be thinking. The dogs are barking at something that seems to be resting on him or stomping on him. They're growling and screaming. Chows are very protective dogs. After what seems like minutes, he manages slowly to get up. He sees a completely white creature vanish. This creature has a set of glowing eyes between its legs, meaning its head twists to look under it. Essentially, it vanished into the brush, but you might be wondering what I mean by its head between its legs. That's what a Sigbin does. It essentially does this, so it's always looking behind itself. They also hop instead of run, and they move very erratically. My brother is very uneasy after having this thing on top of him, but he gets home quickly. My mom is worried. She's always been the spiritual type, due to our grandmother's involvement with black magic, so she grew up around it. Immediately, she inspects him without hesitation. There are 3 distinct claw marks scabbed on his back, but there were no tears on his shirt. But the marks were in the place where he felt like he was being stepped on. He had been marked by a Sigbin. As far as I'm aware, a Sigbin is a witch or an Aswang's familiar, which they keep in clay pots. They use them to hunt children, to turn them into other creatures to use for the said witch. As long as he was marked, he was the only one who could see the Sigbin. If he was found again, he would be taken away. Mom tells him to take a bike home and never walk or come home late. Me and him go to the same school at the time. It was a 10-minute walk away, so I would walk with him. This one day, however, I was sick, so I couldn't go to school, and I stayed inside. My brother spent all of his money on food, so he had to walk home alone. It was around 7 p.m. He walked past the same area that he had this confrontation in. The air smells bad, like straight body odor and urine. He starts to walk quickly. He sees out of the corner of his eye something white and just starts sprinting. He manages to get home in record time. As he reaches the gate, 300 meters down the road, a white figure stands there. Its eyes gleam like light is reflecting off of them. He's crying hard, but then again, he took the same road like an idiot. For the better part of a year, he never took that road again. And for exactly a year since he was marked, the mark would change places, from his back to his chest to his thigh, and most memorably, on the back of his head. My grandmother called us the day my brother had the encounter after being marked, completely unprompted by the way. She said she would bring Lolo over because she knows that my brother was being hunted, and apparently my Lola had a vision of where the witch lives and who she is. Surprisingly though, my mother declined. But after a year to the day, the mark vanished. And then Lola called us again and told us that the witch had died due to being unable to appease the familiars that she had, and that she had this dream where she saw the witch strangled by a white Sigbin. I inherited her dream clairvoyance ability in the way that months in advance I would dream something very surreal, and it would happen months after the dream, which has led me to some strange times, with one occasion leading me to save my own life from a car accident that killed 2 other people. This next story is short but relevant. Across from the house downtown, there used to be an open field littered with billet trees. Much of the forest can be purely billet trees, and it creates a very eerie experience. This was when I met a capra. A capra is a usually harmless spirit, or encanto. They usually nest in these trees, and they're basically giants, estimated at around 10 feet tall, and always smoking huge wads of tobacco. So I was 16. It was New Year's. This was an hour before New Year's. Everybody is drinking, smoking, having fun, and partying. We always host an annual New Year's party for our neighborhood, or Parengaal. It's open to everybody, but mainly it's for family. And at 16, I was still underage enough that nobody wanted to openly hand me liquor. But I was bored of hanging out with everyone who isn't my age, so I go to the field. The biggest tree sits directly across from the house, but way out in the field. It's a huge one, thick branches and hundreds of hanging vines. I think it was almost 40 feet tall. So I sit down and relax with some Coca-Cola. I had an iPod and I was skipping through the songs. Suddenly, I smell this wafting, overpowering scent. It's almost like if you walked into barbecue smoke, but if the charcoal was wet, ashy, and very earthy. It gets into my lungs, and I feel like that I'm going to spew out literal tar if I cough. I look up, and I see a big cloud of smoke and 2 glowing eyes. But I didn't feel scared or worried. The smoke clears, and I see the figure of a humongous human. I imagine that I was about the size of its calves. Very long hair, and a pipe half the size of me, and it was wearing a loincloth. It takes one look at my probably terrified face and laughs. It's like a ha ha ha, but a very deep voice that rattles my insides like a subwoofer. It looks down at me and waves me away, seeing how I'm just a confused kid, and it speaks to me in this barely understandable dialect. I slowly back away to the house. My mom tells me I smell terrible and I should shower. I look back at the tree, and I see a massive hand go up in the air and wave. I wave back, and I go inside. I never really saw him again. For the better part of a year, I had only smelt the odor of tobacco, or heard his voice, but Capras are normally nocturnal, and I didn't go out much at night. His presence was very warm, never malicious, almost like your favorite uncle at family reunions. After a year, the tree was cut down to construct a government building, and it was in the news that the entire construction crew died days apart, falling dead in their beds suddenly, which is why you shouldn't cut down those trees. And now, let's venture to a few islands away in Brunei. We moved there due to my dad's occupation. Over there in Brunei, it's an oil country, so they gave us free housing, free medical, everything we needed, and we lived in a subdivision called Rimba. Rimba was an upscale, nice place. There were a lot of foreigners there, and generally was quite nice and a private community. While I was there, I encountered a Parengaal, which is basically a type of vampire. So here goes. It was around 7 p.m. in Brunei. I was biking around our subdivision. We had only been there a year so far, and nothing relevant had happened until now. Neighbors always told me to stay inside. Indian friends warned me about jinns that would roam in the evening. It was a foggy evening, so I probably should have seen the horror movie signs in the first place, but it wasn't very dark yet. It was almost as if it had just rained, and the fog was a part of it. The community is essentially a massive square, which is also how the roads are connected, so it's 2 lanes throughout the whole subdivision, and if you keep turning, you'll end up at the gate again. It's impossible to get lost. I reach one of the farthest corners of the place and look forward. There's a long road with a turn at the end, leading to the area where the gate is. I see someone with long hair standing around, but I can't make out any details. Keep in mind that I'm this kid with glasses, and I can barely see with them as it is. The lady is covered by a car, so I can only see the head. But then suddenly, I'm hit with this really nasty, strong scent of vinegar. I'm Filipino, so vinegar is like water to us, but I immediately feel sick and uneasy. My stomach drops, the hairs on my neck rise. I look closer at the head, and I see a pair of eyes staring back at me. Not normal staring, intense eyes. Even from a distance, I felt danger. I immediately start to go back, all the while looking behind me. The problem is that if you notice in the picture, there seems to be a small hut. Past that hut is the street where I encounter the spirit. As soon as I hit my street, it bursts out of the hut area past the street in a beeline. I have barely crossed into my street, still on the corner, so I immediately lean back and hide behind a thick tree. I see now, it's just a floating head. I can't cry. I'm too scared to cry. It begins to float back toward the street that I saw it from, and I make a tactical decision. I count down from 10. I see it cross, and I drop my bike and book it toward the house. I don't see it anymore, no matter how much I look back. I'm thinking it's going to be right at my door. I open, I go in, I lock the door. Half a minute passes, and then I hear a bang at my door. Just once. I hide in the living room, away from windows. My mom and dad are in their room, but I refuse to tell them anything because I'm scared that if they'll go check, they'll die. I fall asleep on the floor. The next day, I tried hitting the door with my head, and I freaked out because it sounded exactly like how it sounded yesterday, which meant that it definitely saw me. It still rattles me, even now. This is about 2 urban legends at 2 of the schools that I used to go to in Davao in the Philippines. both of which are devoutly Catholic schools. I had just come to this school. I was in grade 8, but I had some high school friends. No one really knew me, but everyone knows about the half-Asian kid running around. So I'm hanging out with my new friends who show me around. We go to the grade school building. The campus is in 2 halves and is a huge gated place. On one half is the junior high school. This is my building and some other stories I have. This is also where I encountered a dead girl in the 5th floor bathroom, and the other is grade school halfway across campus. So high school boys are not allowed in the grade school area, hence the 2 separate cafeterias. I never did find out why. It was just a weird thing. We used to call the school Jesus Prison because of all the rules. So one day, during lunchtime, we sneak over to their side, past the roving bands of kids. Before we get into the grade school itself, we pass by a statue. It's called Boy Savior or something like that. It was a kid holding a Bible and pointing toward it. Basically, the statue was believed to be that of the child Jesus. My friends tell me this story of when they were in grade school. The statue would move at night. I thought this was not true. I thought this was dumb. They insist, though, that it's true, and they're actually genuinely scared of it. I call them pussies and flex my 2 ounces of bravery. We bet that if we stay late, we can bait it to move and do something. My new friends are scared, but also endeared by me being so, quote, brave on the first day. So we end up deciding. The next day, we bluff our parents to say that we have to stay late to study in the library, which one of the more supernatural things about my time at this school was that my parents actually believed that I studied. Anyways, I gather up with a group of friends, like 5 of us, I think, including me that stayed behind to study. It's 8 p.m. now. The library closes at 9, so that's our window to do this. Before I go any further, I'm kind of freaked out because I actually managed to find a picture of the very statue that is in the center of this story, but continuing on. So we move in 2 groups to the other end of the campus to meet at the grade school. The grade school closes first because they go home earlier. The whole place is super dark. Literally 4 lights illuminating the whole place. One light stands over the Boy Savior statue. We stop a few feet away from it, both groups now together as one. One of my friends goes forward and says what would be in English, "Dude, don't try it. Let the new kid try it first." Someone else in the group agrees. I go ahead first and face to face with the statue. To me, it's literally just a statue. It's pretty unnerving though for some reason, but then again, so is everything else at 8 p.m. in a school that's closed. My classmate jumps me from behind and scares the hell out of me. All of us are laughing, and with our laughter echoing throughout the dead halls, we turn back to the statue. Its head has tilted away from the book and is now facing me and my friend group. We all think, "Holy shit." We all shout in unison. Its head used to tilt toward the book, and now it's angled directly toward us. All of us are genuinely scared now. It's a solid concrete statue that cannot shift. We decide to go home. Shouting from earlier probably will attract the school guards. We all begin walking backwards, paying attention to the statue while trying to leave the area to head back to our building. Keep in mind, the pathway back to our building is either through a huge track oval and a field, or through an old sports complex, all both wide open. As we're walking back, the lights begin to flicker. Literally, all 4 lights begin kind of strobing. One of my friends turns around and sprints. The rest of us begin to turn tail and run as well. I'm looking at the statue, and I see the head moved back to its original position. It wasn't like a twitch. It's like it was a real person. Smooth, controlled movement. I think, well, after that, we all book it for good and head back to the gate. We regroup at the gate, and we are all in various states of panic. We're all freaked out, but we're fine. Not dead or whatever the hell a concrete statue can do to you. We all saw what happened. Exactly. It wasn't an illusion or a game. It's a painted concrete statue that can somehow move on its own. We all separate and go home. Gonna meet up tomorrow. It didn't end there though. I had a terrible nightmare that night. I do not have nightmares. I have terrible paranoia and anxiety from all those different incidents in the past, but this was bad. It was just the statue chasing me. I could hear the concrete scraping against the ground as it moved rapidly toward me. The sound got deafening before I felt a hand on my shoulder, and I jolted awake, hard. It was 5 a.m. at this point. I was tired and couldn't sleep, so I go to school absolutely wrecked. I meet up with my friends before class. Class starts at 7:30. I get there by 7 because I live in the neighborhood. All of us are just screwed up looking. These 8th graders look like college students studying for an exam. Apparently, we all had the exact same nightmare, down to everything. Later that day, we attend the optional daily mass after school because we felt like we really screwed up. Mass is in the grade school chapel, literally 100 meters away from the statue. We sit through Mass, communion, the blessings, all that good stuff. Earlier that day was Ash Wednesday, so we already had the ash cross on our heads because Catholic school. We were so terrified that we went to Mass twice. Mass finishes, and we go home together as a group. We only split up when we leave the school gates. I steer clear of that statue. I try not to even look at it during Mass, lest we get its attention or something. There was no nightmares that night, or any other night. For the rest of my time in junior high, I tried not to go near that thing at all, not even glance after sports practice, or if we had to exit through the nearby gate. Me and my friends still talk about it even today, whenever we bring up high school, and we agree that that statue definitely has something attached to it, or something weird going on. Now this one's pretty short. It was my college experience. It was my second year of college. It was exam week. The college campus is pretty tightly spaced, but full of stuff. Buildings are decades old, and some obviously newer than others. I'm going from building to building, passing by the library. In between buildings are cement walkways. Around 6 p.m. at the time, so the campus is still awake with night classes. It was nice and grassy, full of trees, and I was walking between two of the oldest buildings in the school for a class. Halfway through the cement path, I feel my stomach drop all the way to the floor. That's the best feeling to describe it. At the same time, my eyes seem to cross involuntarily, and then, all of a sudden, I'm looking at the school gates. I walk in again and get my bag checked and sit down. I check the time, and it's 8 on my watch. 2 hours have passed, and I basically reappeared at the gates. I asked the guard on duty who checked me. I feigned that I'm stressed over exams and didn't know what I was doing standing by the gate. The guard goes, "What do you mean? I didn't see you standing here." I was in full WTF mode after that. I missed a review class on exam week by just responding 2 hours later in some random spot. I run to the faculty to find my professor. I was just honest with him. I told him exactly what happened, how I seemed to zone out and reappeared somewhere else. My professor looks worried and asks me if I'm okay, not because he thought I was crazy, but because this also happened to a bunch of other students this year in his class. He gives me full attendance marks and the reviewer for the exam. It's now a well-known legend that between those two buildings, you can just suddenly phase out of existence, or just blink and be somewhere else on campus. I have no idea why, and no explanation, but that was my encounter with it. It made me feel incredibly nauseous, and was almost as though someone had just paused a movie about me and then skipped ahead 2 scenes. I felt very disoriented, and I had to call in sick for my exam the next day anyways. Since this has happened to me, I've heard it spoken about in other groups of people. I think the people still number in the single digits who have gone through it, including me, at least the ones who came back. The building I was heading to was made in the 1950s and was an all-boys dormitory. As far as I'm aware, the Japanese occupied the campus, or what was there before World War II. The college campus is incredibly haunted, and put emphasis on incredibly. Too many really strange things happen due to the age, mostly spooky stuff, but the weirdest one had to be the displacement that I went through by these 2 buildings. It has always been the collection of buildings on that side of the campus, nowhere else. I would have to go back and ask more people there, but it seems that side is the most active, even to the present time, as I've had a few college undergrad friends tell me some pretty scary stuff that happened there. So, what'd you think of those? If you had a favorite one, let me know which one it was down in the comments. Do you have some of your own? As always, I have an email in the description below that you can send them to if you'd like to. Down there as well as a PayPal and a Patreon if you would like to donate to the channel. And of course, super thanks here on YouTube. And with that, I think I will see you in the next one. Thank you for pulling up a stump, and thank you for watching. I hope you have a good week.